Hello, everyone. This is Manuel da Costa from Effective Experiments. You're joining us for a special niche webinar on conversion optimizations for airlines, for anyone in the aviation sector. And in airlines, this webinar is specifically designed for you. Now, a bit of housekeeping. I know we're running slightly 2 minutes late right now. But before we get started, what I'd like to do is welcome you, and just to make sure that you can hear me and you can see me and you can see my screen as well. Otherwise, we're just I'll be talking to the air. So the first thing to do is, if you can see the chat window, click on it and say, hey, this is so and so, which company you're representing and where you're signing on from, just so we know that you can hear us and you can see see the screen as well. So just say hi and introduce yourself. Hi, Helen. We met recently, so good to see you here again. Let's see who else is on. A few people are typing. Megan, project manager from Skyscanner, welcome. Andreas, top flight in Panama, welcome. That's really good. Team from Diggintravel. Daniel from Latvia, from Max Traffic, welcome. It's really good. You guys are taking time out to learn on this. Red Orbit Slovenia, Session Cam UK, Robbie. Hey, Robbie. Neves from Contrad from Belgium. This is a truly global webinar. I want to see who. So I'm based in the UK myself, and I want to see the furthest person who signed in. I think in somewhere in Australia or New Zealand, it'll probably be in the middle of the night. I wonder if someone's joining in from there as well. But yeah, it's good. You can see a few Skyscanner folk over there. That's really good. Thank you for joining us. Okay. If I'm assuming no one's having trouble, because you guys have been able to hear what I'm saying and also been typing away as well. That's great. There's also a little poll that I've created. There's a poll, which is, I think, the third tab. And in that I've asked people, is your company doing CRO? If you don't know what CRO is, I'll just spell it out for you. It's conversion rate optimization. Is your company doing it right now? And what's your level at this point in time? Is it advanced? Are you just starting out? Are you thinking about it? So yeah, let's get some answers going over there. Those answers will also help Iztok as he can probably tailor a bit of the content to you. There's a lot of information going to be shared in this webinar, specifically the survey that Iztok and his company Diggintravel have carried out with 28 global carriers. So there's a ton to learn from. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to bring Iztok Franco from Diggintravel onto the stage, and let him get started. So let me just bring him on over here. Iztok, welcome to this special joint webinar between Effective Experiments and Diggintravel. We're talking about conversion optimization for airlines. Now, the first thing before we get started is can you introduce yourself, and just maybe we can use that as a check that the sound is working fine and the audio is working fine, and we can take it from there.
Hi, Manuel.
Hey, perfect. Everything is good. Your screen is showing. We can see that. So what I am going to do now is I'll become the moderator in the talk. I will monitor all the questions that are coming through. You can carry on with the talk, and towards the end, if you guys have any questions for Iztok or about the content, please put those questions in the question section, and I will start picking them up. You can vote on them as well if people have the same questions, and I'll come back to Iztok after he finishes his talk, and I'll start asking him those questions. So stick around. There's a lot to learn from, and enjoy the webinar. See you soon.
So hi again from my side. I see in the participant list some familiar faces. Good to see that the following is there. Also see some new people. Really happy to meet everybody who is interested in the topic. And as Manuel said, I will try to, in the next half an hour or so, try to go through the topic of conversion optimization for airlines. Just let me start with my presentation. Okay, so first a short introduction. My name is Iztok, and more or less I had around 10-year airline industry background. mostly started in IT, then moved to marketing, become a CMO for an airline, for a national airline, and also run an e-commerce department. But what I'm really passionate about is e-commerce and digital marketing, and especially conversion rate optimization. Approximately a year ago, I founded Diggintravel.com. For those of you who are new, the platform is basically a content platform when we try to provide rich, in-depth content and analysis for travel industry in the area of digital marketing. But what is especially relevant for the airline audience is that we provide specialized airline resources on the topics of e-commerce, conversion rate optimization, ancillary revenue, and also digital merchandising. So this is more or less my intro. Before starting with the topic or with the webinar, just a little bit about the agenda. The webinar is structured in 3 parts. The first part is, like Manuel introduced, we will go through our airline conversion rate optimization survey and research that we did in the last 3 months. It was quite extensive research, and I will try to share some key learning and key findings from it, and maybe also try to stimulate a discussion or guide some guidelines what you as an airline professional and other people involved in this industry can learn from it. The second part of the webinar will be a little bit a short airline conversion optimization framework and some tips how you can do it, conversion rate optimization in practice. And the last part, key challenges and next steps, so what you can do as a going out of this webinar. Before we start with the research, just one thing. As you know, probably the golden rule of the conversion rate optimization, understand customers, really know your audience. I tried to do that as well for this webinar, so I went really through the list of the people who registered. There were a lot of airline people, but also a lot of other people that are involved in the airline industry. Also, airline people are some from large, some from small airlines, some from digitally advanced, some from the ones that are more at the beginning. So I try to structure the webinar in a way that there are some tips or some guidelines or some insights that each of you can take home. Also the IT and other providers for the airline industry. But the best would be that at the end, as Manuel said, we go to special section with questions, and we can maybe follow up on some of the most interesting topics. So, as said, the first part, I'll try to present our airline conversion rate optimization research. Do that. Me and the team in this year, where we had a special presentation of one of the airline merchandising and ancillary, and there was a lot of talk about Amazon of travel. Basically, how airlines needs to be these digital merchandiser, digital retailers. Michael O'Leary is talking about this, that he wants RYANAIR to become Amazon of travel. So there is like really huge buzzword and a lot of pressure for airlines to be really these digital champs. But then, in a separate instance, when I was examining airline e-commerce processes and practices in detail, I ran across this great book from Michael Henke, who is an experienced airline e-commerce guy, and read the whole book, 400 pages, but there was no reference of the CRO in the book. So this to me was like a aha moment, an interesting moment, and I said, how come the book is not old, it's from 2016, but there is no CRO reference? So this is basically why we got to the idea to do the research and survey of the state of the CRO in the airline industry. And as you can see from this slide, we started with the survey 3 months ago, and the research, we reached out to more than 90 airline e-commerce professionals, and we, as you saw here on, as you can see here on the right side, managed to get 28 on board. So almost 30% conversion rate, which is I would say quite good for all the conversion rate optimizers out there. I was quite happy with the conversion rate for this case. If we could have the same for all axes where you do optimization, that would be great. So we had, especially for the first ever such research, we had a great turn-in. So we had 28 airlines. Half of them were low-cost airlines. Half of them was more traditional, full scheduled carriers. So this was like a perfect 50-50 split. And also by size, we had a mix of large, small, and medium airlines. So this is the profile of the people we were serving. On the left side, you can see what we were evaluating and asking. Basically, it wasn't very complex. We just wanted to assess one thing. This is the CRO and experimenting maturity within the different airlines. To do that, we evaluated several maturity models and identified from these models, we identified 6 general conversion rate optimization: people, skills, activities, test, organization support. On top of this, we added one very airline specific area, which is basically the internet booking engine and all the tech infrastructure that it takes to do proper another experiment. As you will see, and this I think is especially relevant for IT providers out there, for the airline IT solution providers, this is one area that you'll see it's very problematic and it presents also a lot of potential. So basically we evaluated these 7 areas, and from these areas we created the airline CRO maturity model. This maturity model is basically what you can see on this slide. You can see these 7 areas on the left side, and all these 7 areas we specific question to each airline asking about the maturity in each of these 7 airlines. So we have level 1 to level 5 ranking and answers for each of these areas. Just give me a second just to check if everything's okay. Okay, so basically these 7 areas were maturing. Is especially relevant for the airline audience because you can use it in 2 ways. First, airlines can use it to assess their maturity, so they can see where, at which stage, at which level of in each area of the conversion rate optimization process they are. But there is also another aspect that they can use it. It's basically you can use it to also plan the next steps. So basically it shows you what it takes to come to a next level, because usually to advance in is step-by-step approach. It's very difficult to skip. This is like a 1-page roadmap what you need to do to advance to the next level in different areas. Okay, so this was basically the maturity and the questions, the areas that we were evaluating, and what we did at the end when we got all together, we tried to summarize them all on one slide. This is like I don't know if you are familiar with Magic Quarter. For this presentation of the results, we grouped these 7 areas in 2 major buckets: the vision and execution. In execution, we put the areas that relate to how you execute, basically tools that you use, the quantity of the experiments you do, the internet booking engine, etc. And in the vision, we put the areas that relate more to how airlines understand conversion rate optimization. So what skills they have, what people they have, what kind of organization. Based on that, this is the result that we then finally created. And you can see how the different airlines were ranked and how they performed. What we did at the end, we put airlines in 4 categories: the laggards, the challengers, the visionaries, and the leaders. And I will not go now in detail for each group. Our research, it's quite extensive document, and you can see special commentary and all the results for each of the areas in detail in the research PDF. But what you can see here is how airlines, at which stages of maturity most of the airlines are. So as you can see, airlines are still at the beginning. So out of 28 airlines, then the ones who are still struggling with the CRO or don't do what in this lower left corner, the laggards, is you see that most of the circles and the bubbles are small. So most of the smaller airlines struggle with the CRO. So we had 7 small airlines, in 6 of them were laggards. And on the other hand, if you look at the top right, the leaders, you will mostly see the big bubbles, the big circles, and this means that they are mostly the large airlines are the leaders currently in the CRO. Also with the color, red and blue, you can see distinction between the low-cost airlines and the full-schedule airlines. So basically, to summarize the findings and the distribution of airlines, some identified still at the beginning. Actually, there were 5 of them. They are quite advanced and actually understand CRO at a high level. And what we see also a correlation to the results, these are that also perform much better on the e-commerce front. Okay, so these were the key findings. Additionally to just benchmarking the airlines and just looking at the industry itself, what we wanted to do is compare airline industry to the other industries, especially how CRO is done in airlines versus the other industries. What we found out, there are more or less all our findings were very similar to the ones the other research are out there. We compared our findings with Conversion XL CRO research and e-consultancy CRO research, and we found a lot of similarities. You can see the main ones here on the top under similarities. However, what we found out, there is one crucial difference, and this difference is that airlines lag behind when it comes to test frequency or quantity. So basically, what we found out in the, for example, in the CRO research from Conversion XL, in the industry, the general industry, they found out that more than half of the companies, and they surveyed more than 200 companies, they do more than 3 experiments per month. What we found out was that basically only 9 out of 28, so means less than a third of the airlines, do more than. Basically, this means that these airlines that 18 out of 29, 19 out of 29 do testing only on a project ad hoc basis. And this was the key difference that we found out. And we also, when we went deeper into what leaders do, we found out this is basically the crucial element. Why? Why this testing quantity is so crucial? Here you can see one very interesting table and very interesting stat from e-consultancy CRO research, where they try to measure or find a correlation between number of testing and actually sales performance. And what they found out was basically that there is a break-even point or a critical point at around between 4 to 5 experiments per month, where they saw that companies that do more than that, they really see significant exponential growth, so large sales increase. And the ones who do less mostly see minor increases or no change at all. What we found out in our airline conversion rate optimization survey was very similar. Our leaders, remember the 5 bubbles in top right corner of that chart, they're the ones who do on average from 5 to 10 per month. And this, as I said, it's basically very similar findings to this one from in-consultancy. So it's crucial that you test and experiment more. The leaders and also other travel elite, which we will talk about a little bit later, do test larger scale. However, on the other hand, there are a lot of airlines that struggle with testing. And we try to also identify the main reason why this is happening. And when we ask people basically what is limiting them in their testing, is that the main reason they identified was basically the technology and the booking engine, basically the so you can see here on the left side, you can see what our respondents told us and what they told. Most of them, they don't constrained, but by either old technology and the booking platforms that are not regular basis. When we go back also to the chart, when we went to try to segment these results in more detail, what we found out, the traditional, let's say, carriers, airlines struggle much more. And the reason for it is because their technology platforms, distribution platforms are, and a lot of are dependent on legacy hosts, while on the other hand, the LCC, the low-cost carriers, a lot of them build their platforms from scratch on their own and have much more. So this is one thing that is very important. There is this quite long quote, but I put it here because it's important, because it summarizes the requirements for the platform, for the e-commerce platform that airlines need if they want to be good at the CRO. So airlines needs an agile platform that marketers, basically the digital marketers and growth marketers, can use without major interference and big projects from the IT. And this, in a lot of cases in the airline, at the beginning, I said there are also in this webinar from the IT solution provider side. I think they can take this as a takeaway and see it basically as a huge opportunity to build the platforms that allow airline growth marketers and conversion rate optimization teams to experiment at a larger scale. Okay, so the last thing from our survey, the last thing that I wanted to share today is we try to identify, or we try to see where basically the leaders excel. Here we looked at not the leaders or in the airline industry from our survey, but we also try to look the travel elite, Booking.com, Airbnb. See some people from Skyscanner in. So we evaluated also what Skyscanner is doing with their growth approach. So basically, we try to see what they do different than the rest, and what brand become this the same or on the same level as the leaders. So there were basically two teams that we found out. The first one was that the leaders don't look at the CRO as growth hacking. Because a lot of time I see also personally marketing teams that they want to do growth hacking or expanding quickly, and they test these different stuff in a silo partial way, like is red better than green than the other, which are all tests, but this is not conversion rate optimization. So leaders treat optimization as an end-to-end process, set of and partial activity, and mindset and a culture within the companies. With the best companies out there is that they have this culture of experimenting, they have the culture of growth, and this is basically what really is enabling them to excel at optimization and growth. And of course, the thing that we talked in the prior sections is they run an experiment at a much larger scale than the rest. So to sum up this, basically, if you take this all together, for CRO leaders, CRO is not only the web optimization, it's not only web experience or e-commerce or digital marketing, but it's much more, it becomes business optimization. And this is, you will see as we will go through the framework, this I think it's also one of the steps that airline can take and take these digital marketing approaches to other areas of business optimization. Okay, so basically, to sum up, this was the short sum of our research. As said before, you can use this finding, and if you want to learn more, you download the whole paper from our Diggintravel website. Now, the second part, we said, okay, let's look a little bit how we can apply some of these things in practice. So basically, I titled this slide as a CRO framework, although I don't like really the frameworks or the plans, but I put two models here. On the left side, you can see the model that we use in Diggintravel, and it's very simple model, because simplicity, I think it's one of the things that I really appreciate. And it's a 4-step model or framework with measure, analyze, optimize, and test. But what is the most important in this model is that it's a loop. So like I said before, leaders do this on the constant basis, and it's a constant loop where they iterate these phases in a very fast way. So this is a very simple approach to CRO, or a very simple process. On the right hand, I put a model from the wider funnel, the lift model, because it has this nice airline image, which I think everybody from our industry appreciates. But also it's a very useful model that you can use, or a framework that you can use basically when you are going and optimize, where you are doing the actual optimization. So there are like 6 different areas that you can use, and you need to keep in mind once you're doing different optimization cases. But for me, the key message here would be not to lose too much time to find the perfect model, but more to find a model, a framework you're comfortable with, and then basically really make it work in practice on an everyday basis. So before going into, let's say, a real case, how you can apply such frameworks in practice is scenarios the typical airline can put this model at work to. So on the left side, again, I try to do a contrast. Left side are the basic e-commerce web shop, let's say web booking scenarios. And these are the 3 key main scenarios, which is basically the search. All airlines still have the search form as the main thing to search for flights and offers, although now lately voice is coming with a rapid speed, so this will change in the future, the voice search. But still, this is the basic scenario. You need to have people search for your offer. Then the key part of the e-commerce is the booking funnel and all the pages in between and all the steps within this booking funnel customer journey. And then you have the post-booking. Booking is something that I see still a lot of airlines neglect when it comes to optimization and testing. And it's in a way, it's a shame. Book represents a lot of opportunities to do some test or pre-test more agilely, to test some concept, because you really don't mess around with the main conversion on the main website. But as we said before, if you remember, when we said what leaders do differently, look at the CRO not only as a web optimization, not only as a website optimization or e-commerce optimization, but they look at all business processes and try to apply CRO and testing framework to all. So here on the other side, I try to put some other scenarios And there are real cases, I see them in practice, of airlines that do CRO on all these fronts. For example, like, of course, mobile apps, but not only mobile apps, but also physical check-in counters, kiosks, in-flight entertainments are becoming now, especially with this bring your own device portals, are becoming another touch point, digital touch point that you can apply CRO to. So basically, all digital touch points. And if you can see also from Sean Ellis, a quote, the original growth marketer, basically the entire customer journey should be open to experimentation. And this relates directly to what we said before about our leaders. So now what I will try to do, because as I said, we are limited a little bit with time, we will try to see, for example, one case of applying the CRO framework to one of the processes, the booking funnel. And basically we set how you can apply it. I will use again our Diggintravel 4-step simple model. You can use much more advanced models if you want, but as I said, the key here is in iteration and doing the constant loop of this process. So basically, if you look at the booking funnel, the process, we do optimization with measure phase. And this is the phase that I call the what phase, where we try to see what is happening. So we need to understand what is happening in our booking funnel in order to really then analyze, to see what to analyze and what to optimize and what to test. So here it usually starts with analytics, or always starts with analytics. So you need to have in place the detailed web analytics. And I also put here a BI or backend analytics, because to do more complex pet testing or complex upsell tests, where you want to really calculate different pricings and effects on margin and also on the cost side, usually more advanced BI platforms are needed to do a holistic evaluation of the results. But at least you need minimum requirements, a detailed web analytics. And for funnel, this means you need to have detailed track of all key points, probably a goal, smaller goals for each key page of the funnel, set properly, and measure drop-off on each side, on each part of the funnel, so you understand when you're losing your users, when you're losing your customers, when customers are abandoning your funnel. Here, I've seen many airline cases where they have the goal set or they have the funnel tracking set, but they still, for example, group several funnel phases. For example, payment phase is one of such examples, because they integrate external providers, and there is like redirect to a payment page of the external payment provider, and it's a black box what's happening there. So you need, in order to have a proper booking funnel tracking, you need to have all these touch points tracked, so you can see where your people are when you're losing your customers in the booking funnel. In addition, what I think is very important is to segment this. So apply different segments, because usually the high-level funnel overview will give you some information, but usually the important information is in the details. So again, if I go to the payment reference that I had before, I did many cases where we saw that by different countries we have different drop-off in the payment stage, and there we evaluated, are the payment methods sufficient? Is there any other communication that these people need to have? So you need to apply different segments and look of your funnel metrics through different segmentation. So basically, this is the first phase, the analytics. Here, as I said, it's quantitative research. You research data and you try to see, and you see what is happening. So you see that something is happening. But then to really understand it, you need to go into analyze page, which is why. You need to understand why these things are happening. And here I think also from the research is where the majority of the airlines still struggle. So a lot of airlines do and treat basic CRO activities as analytics and some A/B testing. But the key, I think, is in the why. And also there was in my PDF research, there is one table that illustrates the importance of the number of the why activities in correlation to the conversion rate. So what e-consultancy found out, that the companies that use above average more than 9 methods to analyze basically the why have much higher conversion than the rest. And here, basically, if you go back to our funnel case, you need to basically to ask this why and the survey and evaluate your gather your user feedback on all key steps of the funnel, either with on-exit service, confirmation page service, email service, tracking session recordings, heat maps, especially user testing. User testing, again, is one thing that I see a lot of airlines struggle to do because they want to do the perfect test. And the perfect test means running it on their own, which takes a lot of time, knowledge, skill, resources, and then they don't do it at all. So my suggestion to the ones at the beginning is do it in an agile way. Use online resources like usertesting.com and do your first tests. And because if you know, one of the main mantras of growth hacking is better done than perfect. And also I agree here 100% better to have 10 user tests done on usertesting.com than none at all. And most of the conversion rate optimization experts will tell you that the first 10 user tests are enough to find major bottlenecks in your booking funnel. So this area is one, I think, that is really important. One other case, recent optimization that we did was the post-booking MPS, where we ask on a constant basis for our users this feedback, how they like the booking process. And once you're getting this feedback on a daily basis and you integrate it back into the optimization teams and the testing processes, then is where you really see great results. So to conclude here, you really need to find all possible means to get user feedback and then build your optimization cases based on that. This is basically what the best really do better than the rest. Then after you analyze the why and the what, you can start building your optimization cases. I will explain or show a model how RYANAIR does that on the next slide. So we'll talk about that shortly. But we will now try to tell a little bit also about the testing phase, the last phase. As we said, for airlines, for a lot of airlines, this is still a problematic area because a lot of them are limited by the booking engine functionality or the booking platforms, but this is crucial. So guys, everybody in the airline business, if you want to do real optimization, you need to have at least A/B testing capability. For better and exponential growth, this also is not enough. You need to have split testing capability. You need to be able to have different versions of the booking flow, to test different versions of the booking flow, for example, different steps, different flows, etc. And this is something that you really need to have if you want to do real optimization. But you can also do A/B testing on other fronts, not necessarily only in the booking funnel. You can also test some of your assumptions through emails, through ads, and stuff like that. But for the booking funnel, it's crucial to really have option to do split pet and A/B testing. What we'll see at the end, especially for the large and the better, the leaders in the CRO, how they can put this testing even to the higher level, how they can do testing, or how the best like Booking.com and Airbnb really scale these tests. So to summarize, this is basically how you can apply one conversion rate optimization framework throughout the whole funnel, throughout the whole case of the funnel optimization. Let's look now at the third area, the optimize phase and the RYANAIR approach. So this is the approach how RYANAIR goes approaches the UX design, so the redesign phase. Again, it's a small iterative phase approach within the one phase of, let's say, conversion rate optimization. You can see, again, the main thing here, that everything is done based on the user feedback and research and tested well. So it's not done based on the assumptions and HIPAA I told you so. So basically, for airlines who are starting with this, you can look at this approach and try to see how you can adapt it to your redesigns. Basically, the core here, or the key message here, is to do this stuff, as I said, on the ongoing basis, on the iterative approach, and to constantly test your booking funnels. For example, you can organize yourself in different ways. The big airlines or the travel elite, they have special product teams for each part of the booking funnel. They do these iterative approaches and conversion rate optimization cycles on their separately in silo in each of their parts. Smaller airlines usually take end-to-end approach to booking funnel, and there is one team who optimizes the whole funnel. As I said, once you evolve, you can do more teams at once, and the best and the biggest do this. But to start, you need to start to have this end-to-end approach and not just the hacks and activities in the part of the funnel. So basically, I will try to conclude this talk with two things, like we said, next steps. But before we go into the next steps, I would like to talk about a little bit of what we found out are the key challenges of airlines when it comes to CRO. Again, we try to group it in two areas. One is for smaller or mid-sized and smaller airlines, and the other one is the larger airlines. For the smaller, one of the key challenges are the resources and the knowledge. So a lot of them have online marketing or not even growth teams that have very generalistic knowledge, because it's difficult to have a lot of specialization of team because the teams are small. So for them, the key challenge is to know and get this CRO knowledge and growth knowledge in the first place. And then second part that's problematic is the IT landscape and the booking engine and web development, which is in a lot of cases outsourced. This is the second area that is really a constraint to smaller airlines. And I will try to talk a little bit later how we can address that. On the other hand, the large airlines you see here on the right, they struggle mostly. What we see is with organizational issues, agility, and the culture. The culture, I think, is the key part. Especially, again, we saw differences between the low cost and the full scheduled carriers, although this is not the rule. There are, like, among one of the leaders, one of the best airlines was a full scheduled airline. So it can be done also in the, let's say, older company with a longer tradition. But as a rule, the full scheduled carriers struggle more. And this is the culture of, let's say, decentralization, having agile teams that can approach growth independently. They're empowered to test. And this in the airline world, a lot of times, is very difficult, because we are all used to this hierarchy and culture of huge organizations. Decision is very long. And it doesn't go well with the CRO or growth optimization process, because for growth optimization and CRO, you need small, iterative, quick, agile tests and experiments that will prove you, that will at the end add up to big exponential growth. We in the airline business, I think, especially with the marketing, e-commerce, and IT projects, there was a lot of this big bang, big project approach, where we do huge projects and expect them to solve a lot of issues. And this, as I said, is the culture and the thing that airlines, especially big airlines, need to solve. So the last thing that I said I will try to address is basically what you can do as a next step. Again, I try to structure it in two parts, one for smaller airlines and one for the larger ones. For the smaller airlines, I think the first thing is, yet Find your CRO champion, somebody who will understand CRO, who will really understand the growth mindset, and if you have it, empower him. And his role will be to learn, to build, to learn the rest of the team. Start with marketing, e-commerce, and then the IT and the other sales teams, and try to really work on this CRO processes and culture. Also, I think minimum analytics, data-driven approach needs to be in place. And as we said, the leaders are customer-centric, so you need to really listen to your customers and integrate customer feedback in all phases of your optimization. As it comes to the IT landscape and the testing and the e-commerce platform, I think you need to take control of your IBE, Internet Booking Engine. If you have a third-party solution, you need to insist and find the one that will allow you experimenting and flexibility to do so. If not, if you have the resources, build your own one. And slowly, I think for e-commerce, you need to insource key development and key part of the team, of the CRO team. Below, you can see Transavia, which is a good example of not a small but medium-sized airline that have one such team. And you can see the first parts are the ones that they have in-house, and the last two are the ones that they outsource, although they would like to insource that as well. But I think this is, for example, for a smaller airline, if it has one such team in place, at least one, it's already a good start. And then they can start optimizing the first scenarios, the biggest scenarios like booking flows and other similar ones. And once they prove the ROI, and they for sure will, if they will stick to the real CRO process, then they can get more resources to build new teams for different products. On the other hand, the larger airlines, I said the main issue is the organization and building the right culture of trust, independence, and empowerment. And this is something, for example, if you look at the elite, the travel elite, the Booking.com, the Airbnb, I also mentioned Skyscanner as a nice example of that. You can check the Airbnb medium channel or Skyscanner medium channel to see how they try to change this culture and to try to have an agile growth approach to transformation. So this is one good thing, I think. There are a lot of resources. Also, Booking.com is a nice example. Here is one example from our research, is how they do these metrics of teams. So you can see these squares, that one big square represents one team, and they have a similar setup than the one on the Transavia on the left. But what they have more than 80 such teams that work independently. And this is key, to scale. You need to have independent teams that are allowed to experiment. And check booking examples. In my PDF research, you have references to all these cases and materials, and you can see how they do it. One additional thing here, Sean Ellis, which I referenced before, the father of the growth marketing term, published, I think, this week one interesting articles for a larger airline, and he plays with the idea that basically here they cannot take the incremental step-by-step approach to agile growth, that the big bang approach is needed if you want to do that. This is something maybe as well you can see and check just to see if you struggle with culture, growth and CRO, installing a growth and CRO culture. The second item or the second theme that we said, that we found out what the best, the elite that experiments do. So if you are an airline and you are already a leader now and you want to do even more experiments, the elite, what they do to really scale, they build their own testing platforms. And this is basically the last thing that I wanted to show you. Is basically, this is especially relevant for the large airlines. It was the case for all three cases that I evaluated. So the Booking.com, the Airbnb, and the case that you see here, Microsoft with Bing, they all achieved this exponential growth of experimenting, which means they're now doing more than 500 or 1,000 experiments per week once they build their own testing platforms. It was the same case with Booking.com, which built their own testing platforms at the beginning 10 years ago. The same case with Airbnb, which built their own platform. And and also the same case with Bing and Microsoft. So for the larger airlines that have the capability, I think, to build a really full-scale testing platforms that allows automation, allows machine learning principles in the experimentation, this is the next steps that really distinguishes leaders from the rest of the pack. So this basically concludes my presentation. And now, as I said, we will try to get back to Manuel, and he will moderate, maybe get some questions in.
Great, thank you for that talk. That was really good. So, you know, quite a lot of examples that were coming out, like the one from Bing, that quote from Paul Rook, who's in the same city as I am, about growth leaders as well. Before we get into Q&A, what I want to do is just to spend just 1 minute talking to you about effective experiments and what that is, because I know a few people who signed up to the webinar were asking, what is this effective experiments thing? So essentially, what we're doing is we have a single centralized platform that helps companies scale up their experimentation. A lot of companies, when they start scaling up, they hit the bottleneck if they have experiments or insights locked away in spreadsheets, which no one has access to. Effective experiments is helping companies and agencies grow their experimentation program through structure, through collaboration, and making experimentation a core part of your company's DNA. We have some amazing airline customers like Transavia. This is Vanya Mlako from Transavia. His team uses effective experiments. As you can see, the problem was it was hard to keep track of everything, especially when it's in 7 different languages. Effective experiments frees up the resources to allow them to focus on effective experiments. I know Alexandra asked that question about knowledge sharing across independent teams. This is something that we help with, keeping track of experiments, keeping track of knowledge, sharing that knowledge, making it easily accessible with everyone. And we also hook up with all the tools that conversion optimization teams also use, like Optimizely, like Google Analytics, or SiteSpect or Adobe Target. If you're interested in scaling up your program, your testing program, and you want to keep build a better knowledge base to help you elevate a program to the levels of Booking or Microsoft Bing, you know, have a chat with us. Go to effectiveexperiments.com and have a look around and get in touch if this is relevant for you and your team. That's it. Over to the questions now. So the first question from Jeswin, I'll come to yours later about the platform. Let's go to the first one that was asked by Awas, and he was saying, what does small airlines actually mean? Is it the number of passengers? If yes, what's the range that this small, what's the range of passengers that you evaluated against as a small airline or a large airline as well?
When we did this, let's say, classification, because it's always difficult, but we have to do it in these 3 major brackets. We used 2 criteria: number of passengers carried and number of aircrafts. For small airlines, I think the benchmark was around 2.5 million passengers carried per year. So this was let's say a rough benchmark where we did that. And then for the larger ones, it's about 10 million and more than 50 aircrafts.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Vas. He also says, for IBE limitations, was this mostly answered from FSEs or both?
Yeah, as I said during the presentation, IBE specifically was more or less the biggest pain point for the full service carriers. But there were also some LCC carriers, so the low-cost carriers, who also struggle with, let's say, independence of the marketing and growth teams from the IT. So there was also, I remember, comments from 2 basically people from the LCC, where they said, we want to have a system where we don't want to coordinate and have our IT interfere every time we want to do an experiment. And this is why I said that to have a, when you really want to scale, when you it's important to have a platform that will allow you this flexibility to marketing and growth teams. Yeah.
Gotcha. So now the next question is from Alexandra. Of teams, how do you avoid teams overlapping in their test from team to team? Knowledge sharing across independent teams. Can I add something over here, if you don't mind? I've seen with like cross-functional teams, the same problem, problems at scale, and that's across knowledge sharing, right? With it's important to speak to different, that the teams are actually communicating with each other, even if it's a cross-functional team. I'll let you take over now.
Yeah, I think it's always a challenge, not only in CRO or growth, but always. If you have a centralized, let's say, very hierarchical organization, or if you have decentralized independent teams working on separate optimization cases. I think, as I said, there are like or YouTube videos that explain this in detail, how they go. But they also talk about chaos, A lot of times, sometimes it can be a chaos. There is lack, but everybody has, they're really open to, everybody has access to all the data. So there's no, let's say, hiding or taking ownership and exclusivity to some research and data. I think this is when we said about the culture that you need to really empower and trust people. I think a lot of the growth leaders that I talked to or listened to or examined, I think one of the real words that they emphasized was trust. Because CRO without trust cannot, because what CRO does, it will prove you wrong and it will prove boss wrong. So when you put your own, let's say, assumption there or your own hypothesis, if you're a boss, you need to be comfortable wrong and being, so basically, as I said, it's a lot of, it comes with the culture and this agile approach. But I would encourage Alexandra, I think, go and check these resources that we have and check the cases from several companies that try to do this. And I am sure they struggle as well, but I think it's a path and it's a journey. Yeah?
Okay, and we have one final question that comes from Jeswin, and he says, is there a platform where A/B testing works really well within the IBE?
My personal experience, unfortunately not. I mean, it also depends a lot because there are so many IBE, internet booking engine platforms out there. I don't have experience with all, but what I think is, usually when you try to integrate external platforms like, I don't know, these typical, let's say, A/B testing, more like software as a service platforms like Optimizely, like some Google experiments, stuff like that, usually you can do more, let's say, simple experiments. If you remember, when I talked about booking funnel optimization, if you really want to optimize and get great optimization results, you need to have the capability to run different instances of the booking engine. And this is something that these platforms won't allow you.
Gotcha. And what about the server-side testing? So a lot of companies also offer server-side testing. I know for one, our integration partners, SiteSpec, I know also that Optimizely have started doing server-side testing. Would that make any impact with the IBEs?
As I said, I think here it's difficult to say there is simple yes or no question. You need to talk to your IBE provider, but my experience, let's say, with the ones that I ran experiments on it, wasn't really positive. So that's why I said it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for new IT providers and vendors to build IBEs that have these functionalities built in, because there's a lot of legacy IT IBE solutions that are just trying to optimize what they have currently, and it's really difficult.
Gotcha. So I think Terry asked this question. I don't know if this makes sense, but he's asked, do you recommend split testing over A/B testing? Okay, he's clarified this. Do you recommend split testing, split URL testing over A/B testing in IBE?
Sorry. Question.
Yeah. So do you recommend split URL testing over A/B testing in an IBE? So I'm assuming like same page changes versus like split URL changes.
I think there are different scenarios. Yeah. So for example, when you do A/B testing, you can A/B test. Usually, when you can apply A/B testing in the booking funnel, you test different versions or different elements within one page of the funnel, usually. But if you want to test different flows, or you want to test different behavior flows, or different sequences of steps, or even different, let's say, one of the last tests we ran was basically try to see if what works better if we bundle products on the first page instead of selling them as the standalone on the third page. So these are like these bigger changes and bigger, let's say, functional or basically different user flows. For this, you will need to have split path testing or different instances of the booking funnel.
Understood. Now, before we wrap up this webinar, I want to thank each and every one of you. Firstly, Iztok, thank you for prepping for this webinar, for sharing your knowledge, sharing the survey results, and for every one of you that have joined us. What happens next is you will get the slides. I'm assuming, Iztok, you're happy to share that. Is that okay with you?
Of course. Also, there is the link in the last slide. There is the link. You can find the original research PDF, because as I said, there are much more examples there, and it's also linked back to me if anybody wants to continue the discussion about CRO in their airline.
Great. So we will put all those resources, the links, and also the webinar system should automatically send you a link to the recording of this webinar as well. Now, that's all from my end. I mean, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be running another webinar myself on the challenges that companies face when scaling their experimentation program, dealing with culture, dealing with different teams and different agendas. That's going to be a really interesting webinar. I hope you can join me. Invite in the next couple of days, so check your inbox. But from Iztok and myself, thank you again for joining us today. Have a nice evening or day wherever you are in the world. Thanks again. This is Manuel from Effective Experiment signing off. Bye.
Goodbye.